Okay, time reflects 4:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get our meeting officially started. I thank everyone for joining us this evening. I do understand that it's probably been a few months since you have convened as a group. Also, I understand that there have been a few new faces added. And so what I want to do is kind of start from the legislative language, Act 141, that Martha Hoover from Sto-Rox was kind enough to share with you as part of the agenda. For my eye, it's always good to color code. So Martha is going to share what I have in front of me. And I would like to start in this direction, just so we remind ourselves why we're here, what is the purpose of the committee, and so forth. So the first section that I have highlighted in red, that kind of prescribes the timeline. So once a district is deemed as in financial recovery, the board has to establish a committee. And the local board has some control over a few of the participants on the committee, but also the intermediate unit for which the district participates has authority and assigns individuals to the board, or to this particular board, this committee. And then we also have generally a representative from the teachers union. So let me just real quickly give you a little bit of information about me. So my name is Nancy Rabel. Many people still refer to me as Nancy Hines, and that's perfectly fine. I spent about 30 years in education under that name and got married after I retired. So I'm not offended. And I just say I'm Nancy. So I was at Penn Hills most recently. I was 9 years there as a superintendent. I also happened to be a high school principal there. I was a high school biology teacher there, not all concurrently or even sequentially. I did move around and go to other districts in between, and some of those experiences included being a high school principal at Still Valley. I also was a curriculum director and federal programs director at Gateway. So I think I'm in a good position to pick up where Dr. O'Toole left off because I have lived this. I've lived this experience as a superintendent. And when I talk about that, I just want everybody to know and understand and hopefully appreciate that there's a lot of emotional baggage, if you will, that goes with recovery status. I felt it. I felt that I wasn't doing enough. I was frustrated. I wanted to do more. And then when the state assigned a chief recovery officer, I was resentful. And I will tell, everyone honestly, that I did not immediately cooperate. I was very careful, wasn't supportive, and I probably even undermined him at certain times when we first established a working relationship. The beauty is, though, that we eventually bonded. And that was the key to the district being exited from financial recovery status. So I was there about 9 years, maybe about 4.5 of those years was spent in financial recovery. And then the district exited, I don't know, maybe 5-6 months after I retired. So I feel like I can look at two different lenses. I can know what the recovery officer did for me as a superintendent for the district and some of the boundary restrictions and so forth, but also on the other side of that, the district administration. How did they feel about it? Trying to work together. So that is the goal. Again, we're looking at the Act 141 language. And now it's my turn to lead the financial recovery efforts here in conjunction with you as a committee to advise me, also the local school board and the employees and community of the school district. So the composition of the advisory committee, if you see in the turquoise shaded color, you see that the school board generally will appoint 2 people. Here, there are 3 appointed. There's nothing wrong with that. There's also a principal appointed to this particular group, and then a business official. It's my understanding that maybe in the past, most recently, there was not representation from our business office, our contractor, but we are correcting that, and we certainly have people here tonight representing that contracted services model. Also, then, as I referenced, the intermediate unit plays a key role, and they're tasked with assigning the following positions. Somebody from the intermediate unit. We're fortunate that we have 2 with us this evening. A representative from a charter school or cyber charter school in which the students who live in this district attend. Also a special education advocate, the superintendent from another district. I'm sorry, there was a alarm going off here. Superintendent from another district, and we certainly have somebody at the table from a neighboring district. And then 2 residents of the school district. And as I already mentioned, we have a representative from the teachers union. So if you scroll down there, Martha, you see in yellow meetings. We are supposed to meet monthly. That is what is prescribed by this legislation. And my goal would be to have those monthly meetings be meaningful. I don't want to meet just for the sake of meeting. I really want to have substantial quality conversation about things that need to be done, maybe even to celebrate some successes and so forth. And so with that in red, I wanted to reference this: meetings of the advisory committee shall be in accordance with, and you see another legislative reference. Keep in mind that we have to follow sunshine. The reason you're hearing the alarm is because I'm here in the district office. The doors are open. Anybody from the community is welcome to come in and sit in and to listen to what we're talking about. We also have to post the agenda online at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting, and I thank Martha Hoover for helping us to do that. Also, the link that is connecting us this evening, that link has to be open during the meeting, and we are recording our conversation as well. The thought is that will be archived and that will be posted on the website, and those things are mandatory. Are there any questions about this first page of information? Okay, so now let's follow a more traditional meeting format. And so I just want to go through real quickly and name the people, match them up, the names with the positions that they hold. So as reflected on your agenda, you see the superintendent, and I can confirm he's sitting across the table from me, Dr. Ron Stofo, and he's the interim superintendent here at Sto-Rox. We also have 3 board members present with us. I can see from the list of participants, we have Director Cameron Colliver, Director Dalisha Hozowski, and we have Director Kimberly Spriggs, and I think I made a mistake. I think it's Adrian Roberts who is joining us in lieu of Dalisha Hozowski. So let me correct that in my notes. We also have Sto-Rox principal from the upper elementary, Ms. Heather Johnston. And as I referenced, we follow a contracted services model for business office practices, and we have Mr. Chad Agnew and Ms. Aura Ragazine with us from JMA. We have the Allegheny Intermediate Unit reps, and they include Dr. Joe Jacoby and Ms. Leanna Lawson. We also have a charter school rep with us, Dr. Melissa Garvin from Propel. A special education advocate, that's Ms. Jessica Taylor from McGuire Memorial. The additional superintendent that I referenced is very near and dear to me, Dr. Caroline Johns. She's from Northgate School District. And let me clarify why I said that. Last spring, I had an opportunity to sit in as her substitute. I was the interim superintendent at Northgate while she took an education sabbatical. And I learned a lot of things that were really helpful to me. And I'm hoping to apply a lot of what I learned in this smaller district here. I mentioned that I had been a principal at Still Valley. It is a relatively small district. However, Gateway and Penn Hills are much larger. So having that experience at Northgate is really helpful. And I thank Caroline for allowing us to collaborate already. You know, we were looking at some of the threat assessment protocols that are on paper, let's say, here in the district versus what's actually happening. And having that experience at Northgate, I can confirm that Dr. Christina Garcheski follows an amazing process. It is absolutely best practice. So we are connecting the Sto-Rox people with the Northgate folks, and hopefully we'll amend our practices and be more reflective of best practice. Also, Dr. Nicole Smith is over there. She's a high school principal. And here we have 2 principals at the high school, middle school level. And those individuals are going to be meeting and doing a tour of Northgate's middle school, high school, so they can learn how they operate pretty well, I think, a school within a school model, how they're physically in the same space, if you will, but they're separated by floors, and how they coordinate 2 completely different schedules. So again, Caroline, thank you for that support. Our 2 residents we have on the list, we have Ms. Tina Nagel, and I see that she signed in with us, and Mr. Jackson. Let me just double check. I'm not sure that I saw him. Okay, I do not see him. And also representing the teachers union, we have Ms. Maria Kotek. So thank you everyone for giving up your time to join us for this initial conversation and kind of a meet and greet for us. I was told by Dr. Toole that the established practice was to meet the last Wednesday of every month at 4 o'clock and to leave the option of virtual on the table. Is there anybody here that feels that that's problematic, would like to make a recommendation to change our meeting dates, and or our times? Still works for everybody? Okay, thank you. All right, so now we'll dig into more of, let's bring everybody up to speed. Let's share my initial reflections and let's talk about some more of our work that we need to do moving forward. So I wanted to be really careful with this first agenda. I didn't want to introduce interpretations on my part. I wanted to reduce the subjectivity. And so a lot of what's populated in this agenda is truly cut and paste from documents that I've had access to. So those documents include obviously the financial recovery plan. And then also there are some PowerPoints and supporting documents that the other chief recovery officers who preceded me, there were two of them, some of the things that they shared publicly. So let's start with moderate financial recovery. I think it's important to keep in mind that this was actually assigned in 2021. So it feels like that was a while ago. And I would say that, some things can be different, right? So is the need the same? Where are we when you look at that? Well, let's find out why. Let's look a little bit more closely. Why was the district assigned financial recovery status? And you can see the 3 points that are listed there. The number 3 bulleted item there, the Moody's downgrade, I don't know that that matters a whole lot in this moment because we don't expect to be borrowing any money, but still it was a consideration way back in 2021. Once the district was put into financial recovery status, then there was an obligation for the chief recovery officer to help work with district staff, personnel in the community to put together a financial recovery plan. Is there anybody who's joining us this evening who needs a copy? It is displayed on the website, but would anyone like us to email you a copy? Okay. All right, so that was approved at the state level and also at the local level. So it kind of dictates what we're supposed to be doing. Now, what's interesting for me coming in here several years in, there are things that I feel like maybe they're not so relevant right now. And that's where we're going to have later conversations and subsequent meetings about, okay, again, what's relevant in this moment? Are there new challenges we didn't anticipate when this plan was put together and approved, again, at both the local level and the state level? And that plan is dated March 11th, 2022. Now, that wasn't the only time that the state intervened or kind of put greater eyes, if you will, on the district. You see the note there that the district was assigned financial watch, and that was a year before. So that was March 2021. I'm sorry, March 2020. And then 2021 was the recovery status. And I remember being in that situation, and I had a very active local legislator reach out and said, Nancy, what do you think? If we take the status willingly and don't fight it, it's going to open doors. We're going to get a lot of things. We're going to get some support, but it admittedly is a black eye. And having been in the superintendent position at that point, I mean, I was really torn. I don't know, we could certainly benefit from some financial support, technical service support, but my gosh, do I want to be one of those districts? So I want you to look on the positive side of what has happened here in the district. Admittedly, though, nobody wants to be in this particular status. It doesn't feel good. So there's a chief recovery officer assigned. And when I think about that role, the way I understand it and the way I saw it played out is it was almost like technical support, I want to say, for the superintendent, for the board. The financial recovery plan is in place, as I said, but the recovery officer has an opportunity to work on anything that can be directly or indirectly related to that plan. Something that's not related to the plan, I wouldn't be involved in. I'll give you an example. Sometimes there's student disciplinary matters here, believe it or not, just like any other school district. And if there is a disciplinary hearing, I have no involvement in that. So I just want to be clear about that. Or IEP conversations, if it somehow ties into finance, the recovery plan, of course I can insert myself and say, hey, here, in my experience, we did this. What do you think? But generally, I'm not going to get involved in those types of things. Also, there's a state intercept program, and I participated in this before, and that's whereby the state guarantees that your loan payments are going to be made. So you think about it, you're a struggling district, Your bills may not be paid on time. You have poor credit by virtue of the Moody's model. And so who wants to stick their neck out there and give you money? Because it just feels like it's too risky. So that's where this Intercept program comes into play. And the state guarantees no matter what, you're going to get your money to the lender. So you can see that we are indebted to the Bank of New York Mellon Trust, and that loan will be paid off December 2029. You can see the reference there to about 5.3 million for the principal that's remaining, and the original loan amount appears to be about 8.345 million. So without that guarantee of payment, the district probably would not have been able to get those funds. Here's another one, the Empowerment Grant Funds. This is a substantial investment by the Department of Ed in Harrisburg in districts who receive these. So for Sto-Rox, the amount has been annually $2 million. And so far, 6 times $2 million. This is not tax revenue. This is not grants. This is not grant in the sense that you have a lot of prescribed applications for the money. It's a little bit more flexible. So you can see about $12 million has come into the district from that source. And another key piece of information is that in 25-26, renewal is not guaranteed. And that's not something new or different. It's just annually you cannot count on that money coming in. So it's a possibility. You may not use it to balance your budget. So just key pieces to keep in mind as we go through this. Also, transitional loan funds. They were received here at Sto-Rox School District November 2022, and they were spent on capital projects. Now, with that, we have to start paying that back, and it's $100,000 a year for 10 years. There's no interest assigned to this loan, and in next year's budget, you will see the JMA folks will put that payment in there that is expected. Here's another piece. It's kind of hard to measure because the district isn't going to see bills for these services. The recovery officer, the superintendent, generally the board will be aware of the technical support services being offered. And they could be, as listed, cash flow analysis, various audits of operational practices, development of projections, and most recently, PFM is a group that works for the state to support Sto-Rox. They put together a reconfiguration study, and we do expect in the future that will be released publicly. The board has had an opportunity only to preview it at this point. And we do expect that there will be a superintendent search facilitated starting in February. And the goal is perhaps to have somebody long-term in the seat as of July 1. All of these services are at no cost to the district. So if you think about, you have a district, especially when there's a change in personnel, and even at the recovery officer level, it takes a long time to get up to speed. You know, I'm familiar with the framework of the model, but just finding out who does what, you know, the more you look, the more you find, and then the more you look. So those types of things, it's really a great support to be able to reach out to analysts, researchers who can do some of that work for the district, because everybody's maxed out here. I mean, that's a clear observation. Nobody has time to do one more thing. So these can be very beneficial to districts, especially small ones. And even as a larger district in financial recovery status, we cut to the bone. So we really didn't have a lot of extra people with time on their hands. All right, so if we look at the plan, again, this was approved locally and at the state level. Here are some more cut and paste. And the focus is on achievement, academic achievement, financial and operational goals are in there as well. And it's to improve the overall management of the district. I put this next one in bold because this is a hard one. You know, when I worked at Penn Hills when we were in financial recovery, I also lived in the community, and I had lived there for about 30 years at that point. I knew we were paying really high taxes, and when you look at the county list, we were near the top, as is Sto-Rox. But this is one of those things, and it's hard. I don't know how a board member handles that, because you know you have people who elected you to do a job, and then they feel like, to be honest with you, that like you're sticking it to them because you keep raising taxes. Well, at this point, you really don't have other options. You have to think about, in reality, the state is pumping a lot of money in here, and they can't do that forever. They can't do that long term, but there also has to be some version of a local match. And when you're raising the taxes to the index, you can even seek the exception to go higher than the index. that's kind of the local match that seems fair and appropriate at that point. Also, in a reference there at the end of that bold list of statements is that the recovery officer does have an option to deviate. So to recommend to the board, let's do less than or no tax increase. Dr. O'Toole, as I understood last year, only did a partial tax increase, didn't recommend going to the index. Right now, the plan is that it's up to the index. That's the recommendation that I have in this moment. If something changes, I certainly can retract that. I can edit that, modify that. We have until June 30th to approve next year's budget. But right now, that's where we're at. And that's really hard. That's a tough one. Other pieces in this section, the district remains in financial recovery until the Department of Ed terminates the status. Also, there's exit criteria outlined in the plan, and it's really clear what does it take to get out in I don't want to say unfortunate because it is what it is, but some of these are really, really tough. We'll talk about them in a minute, and they're multi-year consecutive to-dos. And so if you slip up one year, you kind of get reset, you go back to year 0, and then you got to start again and get 3 consecutive years and so forth. That's difficult. Also, the recovery officer, my position, is obligated to update the Department of Ed regularly. So there are monthly reports that I must complete, and I'll be filing my next one here within the next few days. Those reports go directly to the Secretary of Education, and then the people at PDE that I report to under the Secretary of Ed. They are supposed to be displayed on the website. So that's a matter of transparency. And when you think about it, it feels right to me. I shouldn't be able to claim something and then be secretive about it. If I'm going to say something about what I see or what I'm concerned about, I have to be able to stand behind that. So once I file that, that will now be posted. I'm not sure that they've been posted in the past. Doesn't matter. We're going to correct that. They will be posted on the website. The reporting categories are prescribed. They're outlined. I can't deviate a whole lot and talk about something that is maybe not relevant or as relevant to the people in Harrisburg as it may be to us. Any questions so far? Okay, and I've also hinted at the plan will be amended as needed to reflect significant changes in the district's progress and to put strategies in place to address any new changes or challenges, I should say. So I want to be really clear about that. 2021, no changes, adjustments. We're probably due for one. I don't think that's a hard sell, but we have to have a rationale for doing that. Not because we just don't like something that was in there. Now we're going to get rid of it. This is our opportunity. It really has to be an honest look at where we are. What are our challenges? How do we get to the exit criteria and so forth? All right. So more directly from the plan that's in place, the guiding principles. And you can see underlined in this recovery plan, those 4 areas: fostering ongoing quality professional development, empowering leadership, maintaining continuous improvement of instruction, and provide student-centered supports. And I think whether you're joining us as a educator who's been formally trained, you're somebody who has access to children in the community, you have your own children, you babysit, you have nieces, nephews, like these are all good things. I think we would agree about that. And those were selected from 18 different options that the state had available at the time the plan was drafted and approved. Then look at the next section there from page 13. These essential practices I just listed, they're translated in this particular, the Sto-Rox Recovery Plan, on 5 key areas. And again, these are best practices. We all want this for our children. Focus on instruction, culture and climate, talent management, resource management, and school safety. So you can see how the academics ties in with the operations and the finance. All right, so the exit criteria, what does it take to move to the next level, which is 5 years of monitoring? So in red, to me, this is a really, really tough one. As I hinted at earlier, 3 successive years with positive annual financial results, a positive fund balance, so that when you look at for that year, what you received in revenue exceeds, even if by $1, what you spent. And what districts do, and I know this from personal experience, is that, and I inherited this one, the practice was, well, we're just going to plug in numbers to balance the budget. That is not recommended. So people do that. It catches up with them eventually. There are also there's also creative accounting where you straddle the year. So the fiscal year concludes June 30th, and then you hold those bills that came in May and June, and then you pay them in the next fiscal year. Again, that's not ethically, morally sound. Some people do that, but we're going to do it the right way. And we have to have those 3 consecutive years where there's more money received than spent in that particular year. Any questions on that? Okay. The next one, I just left it in black because I don't see that as a big deal. I don't see it as a challenge. I think it's already happening that we are not requesting or requiring from the Commonwealth in advance of its basic education subsidy. Where I was, what I inherited was a practice whereby we would ask after the tax dollars start trickling in. So initially at the end of the summer, early fall, they are flowing. So cash flow isn't a problem. Then you kind of crash February, March, April, it's kind of dried up. And so what do you do to pay those bills? And what we were doing, which was not sound, and I didn't know any better as a new superintendent, to be honest with you, we were asking the state for advances on our subsidies. So these dollars were already earmarked. They may not have been coming in till later in the year, maybe April or June. And we're asking in February, hey, can we have an advance on that? You do that a couple times, you're definitely on the radar, and you're going to be a candidate for Financial Watch to start, and then recovery. Also, it's not listed here, but districts, we fell into this as well. They do tax anticipation notes. And so they get extra money put in the system to close out the bills from the prior year, and then they're going to pay off the tax anticipation loan after, or the note after July 1, when the money starts flowing in again from real estate taxes. So I think we're all committed here that we want to follow best practice. And even if it's painful making that transition, we are all committed to doing it. So that's a very good thing. District salaries are paid when due. Well, let me tell you where I was. We had an issue with that, and we had an arrangement with a local vendor. I had to bring in my administrators and said, look, any vacation plans you have, rethink them. I don't know if we're going to run out of cash or not. So our lender would spot us one payroll, and our payrolls were a little bit over 2 million. And so I always knew I could make payroll, but I don't know that that person was authorized to do that. I certainly appreciated it, but districts can fall into that. Thankfully, I don't see any evidence of that here. So that is a good thing. Defaulting on the bonds, again, we have the intercept program in place here, so that's not going to happen. People are going to get paid, but certainly that can happen. And then that the district does not satisfy the criteria for determination of recovery status. And that goes back to the language we just talked about, the negative fund balance, the subsidy advances, consecutive annual deficits of 3% or more, all those things that qualified the district to be moved from Financial Watch to financial recovery. Here another one in red, underlined. This is a hard one because the district has to be able to show in the next 5 years projected out that it's going to be a positive fund balance. So for 5 consecutive years, when you look forward, we are not likely to exceed the revenue that we're bringing in. Our spending will not exceed that. Now, you can argue it's a projection. How do you know? But patterns start to show themselves, and you see a pattern. You plug in pretty good numbers, what you expect moving forward, and then if it's not positive, we're not eligible yet. And as I said, if 1 year looks good but the second year doesn't, then there's an issue and there's a problem. So those 2 that I have coded in red and underlined, they're really, really hard ones. The last one there listed on this page, it's in black, but underlined on the last, we're looking for some evidence of academic performance. And there's different ways to measure that. And again, I would never suggest in any way that we do anything unethical, but there's some flexibility. I'm kind of inspired that the district is using the NWA, the MAP assessment, and that may be something that we could legitimately use to say that we qualify in this particular category. Any questions? I'm going to talk just real quickly about the 5-year trend showing, projecting out that we would be in a positive fund balance. When you look at the original, the current financial recovery plan, it is really, really negative. And when you look at that trend, even if you plug in some of the extra money that we have received and the supports, it's less negative. but it is still negative. So we have some work to do here, but we're capable. I know that we can do it. All right, so this is the subjective part where I want to talk about just what I've seen. And I've only been here since the middle of November, but having lived this, I kind of have some things in my head, like I know to look for things that really are glaring or can be glaring, or things that aren't so glaring. And when you're busy and you're an administrator working in the district and you're hustling every second of every day, you may miss those. So that's, why I'm here to help extra eyes and ears. So if we go back to the guiding principles and specific to fostering ongoing quality professional development, we all agree that's a good thing. Okay, there are PLCs, professional learning communities. They are developed in all of the schools. There's time set aside. That is a very good thing to have the framework in place. But then there's some issues that we have to resolve. And one of the things that I noticed right away is that there was an individual hired to populate the agendas or the main focus of those groups pretty much through the end of the year. And we know that things change, right? And so let's say that there's an administration of MAP and the assessment results are really good, really bad, and you need to dissect them. Maybe there wasn't enough time put in there. There's also PLC time used for mandatory trainings that district staff must participate in. So I think there could be a little bit better job done with that. It really should remain fluid. And I understand that there are many people here in the district who agree with that, and we'll be able to take care of that. Empowering leadership. This is a hard one. I've kind of already talked about my experiences, knowing that people are overwhelmed. You have good people working really, really hard. Sometimes you have brand new people. They mean well. They're not sure. They don't know what to do or how to do. And when I look at the job descriptions, and let me just clarify, Dr. Sofo, the interim superintendent, put out a directive to all the administrators here and said, I want to see your job description. If you received it, you signed off when you joined, great, share that with me, but also make notes, like, what are you really doing? How are you spending your time? And some people didn't have a written job description, a formal one. So we're working to look at those. But I can tell you that there's one principal here I know very well, is definitely doing too much on paper. This person is not only running a building, but also has a tremendous responsibility managing the federal programs. That's a lot to do for that particular person, who is running a building pretty much by herself and supposed to be an instructional leader, supposed to be managing student discipline, promoting community engagement. That's a whole lot to do. So I have a feeling that there may be a different way to do that. So I wanted to make a note to that. And then there's the catch-22. So when you hire out services, you use a contracted services model, it costs money, right? I mean, it would be cheaper just to somebody who's already on the payroll, just take one more thing, other duties as assigned. Well, I just don't think that that's the way to go. But you have to factor in, okay, now we're going to pay for it. How much is a fair amount? Will you get quality work? Who's going to supervise that outside contractor? And all of those things can be problematic. There's the other piece to that. If you always rely on somebody else to do that type of work, we'll never build the internal capacity. Even working with PFM, as I said, they have a contract with the Department of Ed, and they help us with research analysis. But one of the things Dr. Sofo and I do is we meet every week with these individuals. Now, they're not from the area, so we're meeting virtually, but nonetheless, we are talking about the theory. What are they doing? What's the rationale? Because we need to understand that. And I think you're very, very vulnerable if you give carte blanche to anyone and say, just take care of this for me. And I've seen in districts a lot of times when math is involved, a lot of people are not confident in math and they shy away. And, there's a running joke in school communities where, how do you know if you have a bad business manager? Well, you know when it's too late, because you have that math phobia maybe. Okay, do this. This is what they said. I told you I had it early on, and I was a science person. I trusted the person. They said, oh, you do tax anticipation notes. That's typical. Everybody does. I didn't know any different. So to be able to have the confidence to ask, to learn, just the theory behind things so that you are more likely to catch an error or an oversight. Also, the continuous improvement of instruction. There's not really evidence of a true curriculum cycle here. We're learning a little bit more. There are good people doing good things, but a lot of that is not coordinated. And so that's an area where we need to grow. And also the technology piece, this terrible weather that we've had over the past couple of weeks. Sto-Rox didn't have the opportunity to do a virtual day, a FID as we call it, flexible instruction day, because all the kids don't have computers. So they had no instruction for those days. So if you tacked on if it was a Friday or a Monday, the kids went several days consecutively without any access to instruction. That's a problem. So computers cost money. And a lot of districts, used ESSER money or what have you, the COVID dollar money, and they bought the computers, but they didn't factor in, okay, these probably have a shelf life 3 to 5 years. How are we going to replace them? So if we convert, we shift reliance or incorporation of technology in the learning, what happens when the equipment starts to fail? There's also a piece here, and it's legitimate. There were some concerns that maybe the computers that the district purchased were not well taken care of. Maybe kids' families weren't responsible. Well, that's one thing I know Dr. Sofa, we've talked about it a lot. He's very passionate. There's a way to do this. And he came from an environment where they did it and they did it well. And there was very little damage to the computers. So we need to work on that so that the kids, have the same experience as other kids do. All learning shouldn't shut down in this day and age. We have devices, we have tools, we should be able to incorporate them. And then the student-centered support. So I'm going to ask Dr. Sofa to tell me, what is the number of community partners we have here?
Probably over 75.
Over 75. Now, part of the challenge is good people doing good things, but some are working in silos. Who from the Sto-Rox staff is bringing people together, following a multi-tiered system of support and saying, whoever the student is struggled today. Who knows what about this student? And it's informing people that this student encounters throughout the day. So we have to do better with coordinating that. And also, to be honest, we have to verify that people are earning what their contract says, earning their money. They should be fulfilling the duties and responsibilities as specified in their contracts. That's accountability. We have to do better with that. We're also stumbling onto some contracts have expired. We've stumbled on some things where maybe the board wasn't asked to approve something and it's being implemented nonetheless. So we're trying to clean up those types of things. Any question before we get into more dollars and cents? Okay, so again, a lot of this is cut and paste. Mark Turnley is the independent auditor. He is a CPA, highly respected in the field. And when I look at some of his audit reports over the years, and certainly the recovery plan has references too, we'll include in the discussion here. But these are the trends. So starting in 2016, up through, let's say 22, 23, you see what's recorded. What this person has signed off on is saying, I've reviewed the books and here's what I have. Remember, again, the fund balance, meaning how much is left over after June 30th, right? So you see the negative trend really bottomed out 2019, 2020. And that's when the district, which makes sense, was assigned financial watch. The next year, just a little bit less negative. And then the district moved to financial recovery. And then you see a little bit of an uptick, but we have to be really, really honest. That's also during the COVID pandemic, and there was a lot of money flowing. And we'll break down some of that. So from 22, 23, it was a positive 8.3 million. So a jump of $10 million. And there are guidelines. This year, the district has a budget of about $36 million. And 8% is all that they can have, any district can have in the fund balance. So then you have to start parsing the money out and assigning it to different areas that you may need support in. So your rainy day fund, if you will. And some of those areas could be special ed, anticipated special ed costs, maybe sending students to private schools, APSs, charter school tuition, healthcare costs for your staff, capital repairs and improvements. And so the solicitor usually guides that, but some money is set aside. So plus 8.3 million is a hardy number, and 4 million was set aside for capital improvements. Now, Mark Turnley, again, he is the independent auditor. He's a CPA. He's going to present out his findings of the 23-24 financials, and that's scheduled for March 20th at one of the upcoming board meetings. So it's going to be positive, very positive, more than 8.3 million, but you have to think about, okay, in the absence of, because we have to be informed in the decision making. We cannot be emotional, although this is an emotional thing. I've already said that. And if we didn't have some of these other dollars that I'm going to reference, where would we be? So you start with the ESSER allocations for Sto-Rox over that period of time, the COVID money, as we call it. The district received about $14.1 million. Okay, that was money that, it wasn't from local taxpayers. The empowerment dollars, we've already talked about that. $10 million so far from 1920 been received. So now we're talking about 24.1 million. I didn't include the 24-25 empowerment dollars. We just received those January 23rd, and they are going to be earmarked for capital improvements. We also talked about an interest-free transitional loan that was $1 million. So now we're at $25 million. And if you go back to the chart, if you could scroll up a little bit, Martha, there, page 55, reference that table. If you took out $25 million, you could see we would definitely not be positive. So that's just something to keep in mind as we look to the future here. Okay, on the next page, this is additional money that was received at the district level, and that was a $1.75 million DCED grant, and that was mostly used for HVAC upgrades. $600,000 was given to the district from the Department of Ed for security cameras and other technology. So again, I want you to think about, if we didn't have those dollars, the district would be severely negative. So what do you do when you have extra money? I'm referencing page 12 in this section to say that there's allowable targeted spending. It's not just, well, let's, what have you. It's prescribed in the recovery plan. Elimination of the district's negative fund balance. Right, we always want to take in more than we spend. That's a given. So we want to try to stay in the positive. Investments in facilities and capital need. We have to keep that very much in the forefront of our minds. I referenced the 2025 PFM reconfiguration study that will be released publicly in the near future. But even in that, it references a former capital study that was done here in the district that about $7.1 million worth of capital improvements are needed at the middle school, high school currently. That's today. And we all know how inflation works. That's going to be a bigger number in the future. So although we may be sitting at positive 10 million, you have to see that as that's not extra money just to spend. There's going to be stuff to spend it on, and we're going to come to a shortfall at some point. So we have to be very careful about that. The next one, provision of salary increases above amounts available. I don't see an issue with that. I looked at the contracts. I know that they are all pretty much in cycle. There's nothing that's due up for this fiscal year or next fiscal year. The union leadership for all the groups, they've been very positive and supportive, and I think they're realistic about what the district can afford. So I don't worry about that so much. And then elimination or moderation of required tax increases. That one, for me, again, having lived in a community that was in recovery, mandatory increases, that hurts. And that's something that we want to relieve our taxpayers of as soon as we can. So at this point in time, I'd like to introduce Chad and Aura. They're from JMA Consultants. And there's just a couple topics there I'd like them to address from their perspective. They are the trained financial people. And go ahead, I'll allow you guys to comment on these areas.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate that. So, we're going to just go down through these bullet points here that we have on our agenda. So the year-to-date expenditures, as we present reports to the board every month. So at the January meeting, the information we presented was through December 31st of 24, because that's when everything is reconciled as of then. The district had the revenues exceeded the expenditures at that point in time by about $10.5 million. We've spent about 40% of our budget as of December 31st, and the revenues come in at about 68 or 69% of what we have budgeted. I'm going to skip that cash flow. I'll come back to that, or we'll speak about that here in just a second. We're working on the 25-26 budget. Currently, I'm meeting with the leaders of the district there as we put that together. And as Nancy mentioned earlier, we are anticipating, we're working under, at this point, working under the presumption of increasing real estate taxes to the index. We hope to share some high-level information with the board here coming up in the February board meetings. And then the fourth point there that I think Nancy has already kind of touched on, as we look to 25, 26, and even beyond that, we definitely need to be very conscious of money or grants or funding that has come in the past several years here that is not funding that we can count on moving forward, or that we know for sure, such as the COVID money. We know that's spent and that's gone. That's not that is not available to us in the coming years here. But we think about the empowerment grant, which we've received several rounds of $2 million. That once again is not going to be part of the budget for 25, 26. So part of our process here as we work with district leadership and work with the board, how do we ensure that we're being fiscally responsible and taking into account those types of facts and those revenues that will not be available to us, or at least that we cannot count on being available to us moving forward. So with regards to that cash flow statement there, Aura, do you want to just make a few comments on that?
Sure. So the cash flow statement is based off actuals and then projected revenues and expenses for the year. So PDE provides us with a template and we update it every month and include it with our board reports. So you'll see on those reports the fluctuation of the incoming money, how in the beginning of the year it starts out low, as Nancy has described, that influx of money starts in the fall. So you see our cash flow rise, as well as our expenses, whether it's related to payroll, taxes, and charter school tuition payments. The end goal of this cash flow at the time still shows a surplus of cash to the school district of anywhere from 3.2 million to 5.7 million. So we do have a fluctuation right now because of that latest empowerment fund. But right now, the cash flow does say a healthy cash balance for the year end.
Are there any questions there that we can answer or comment on?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So
Sure.
the last section there, again, I want to revisit the idea of an amendment. I think PD is expecting that, we're going to make that suggestion. They'll help guide that process as well. Given the age of the plan and a lot of changes here in recent times and more are expected to come, as an advisory committee, a team, we need to consider what areas of the original plan should be addressed in that amendment. And again, it could be oversights, omissions, things that just don't seem to fit, or things that really don't have the priority level status that they had when the original plan was drafted and approved. And we have asked PFM, again, they are a group of researchers, analysts, to go through the tables and to update them, because some of the tables are old. They have information that I really don't think is relevant. Chad talked about charter school tuition. We want to see that. We want to look at enrollment trends and so forth, because that definitely impacts the district operations and the viability. Any questions thus far? Okay, so if we stick with the last Wednesday of the month at 4:00 and having a virtual option, it would seem that we would meet again Wednesday, February 26th. We'll send out an invitation. If you, again, would like a personal copy of the recovery plan, we'll be happy to email that. Just reach out, let us know. And I want to make the note that in that next meeting, we are going to devote some time. This is at the request of the board president who's with us this evening. He would like us to talk about, as a group, an advisory group, the attributes and skills necessary for the future long-term superintendent to be successful. And this is a key position in implementation of a recovery plan, whether it's in its current format, it's amended now, amended later. And the goal is to eventually qualify for exit. I know that it can be done. It's going to be a lot of hard work, a lot of tough decisions, but it's going to take a special person. I would love for Dr. Sofo to stay forever, because really his experience is so valuable. It truly is, because we can sit down and Mr. Hauser, who's here as well as an interim administrative supporter, it really is helpful when you've had a lot of experiences. You tend to be a little bit calmer. We understand that, something might be scary and it feel like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? You can problem solve together, put your heads together, and you can figure it out. So the person who comes in here next, long-term, this is going to have to be a really special person. And we're going to help inform that process. As I said, PFM is going to be helping to do the technical parts of that. The board will be involved. They'll be screening candidates. But it'll be interesting from your very diverse experiences as a group. Some of you represent totally different entities. Some of you have the community perspective and so forth. We can talk and collect that information and then pass it off to PFM. So any final questions, remarks before we close out? Gosh, you're a quiet group. All right. Hopefully we'll have some really engaging conversation moving forward. Dr. Sofo has his hand up.
All right, and usually at any meeting, I'll say something, but not a whole lot. About half of our budget goes to charter schools. I was a former charter school administrator, CEO. So Melissa, you may be interested in this. We need to see that money as potential revenue for us as we become a more caring, safer, and higher quality school district providing equitable education for our kids. What that's going to require is a growth and innovation mindset, not a management mindset looking to just manage decay and decline. So I pledge to bring my charter school experience and innovation and things that work to Sto-Rox in ways that are appropriate and adaptable to our situation. And part of that recovery must be, straight up, must be that we're an attractive, quality school district, that people choose us as opposed to charters. Charters aren't bad. Choice has always been there, and it's usually been there for the rich folk. And now with the charter school law, anybody can go where they need to go. We get it. We want to do what needs to be done and change our thinking, change our form and structure of how we provide education, when we provide it, where we provide it. So just know that while a lot of people lament, look at all that money that goes to charters, I see it as part of our recovery plan, and I'll just leave it there.
Okay, anybody want to respond to Dr. Sofo? Oh, I see some smiles. That's good. See, he is very dynamic. I concur. Okay, well, we'll close it out. As I said, this is being recorded. The goal is that we will upload this to the website and that we'll have that information, and you will receive an email copy of the next agenda at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting. And we'll also post that online. So thank you again. It's a pleasure meeting you, even though it's a virtual format. I look forward to the day we can meet in person as well. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.